Personalized learning is a widely spoken topic in education today. Personalized learning is not new. It's a concept that's been there for a while. But the need for personalized learning is well justified in the information age in the 21st century education.
Our students bring diverse experiences, skills, strengths, and interests, don't they? Don't teachers always try to understand students' needs, interests, and strengths? So, what is personalized learning? This poses several questions. In the perfect sense of personalized learning, what aren't teachers doing right? What should they do better? How should they transform their teaching? Do they have to really transform their teaching? Are they already using personalized learning? These questions are worth exploring. In order to understand what personalized learning is and to clarify confusing aspect of personalized learning, we have invited Dr. John Downs from Talent Institute of Innovations in Vermont University in USA to speak with us. John is an experienced scholar on the topic. Personalized learning is his passion. He and his team have published a number of articles on personalized learning. John currently works with the school leaders, educators in Vermont districts of education. Thank you, John, for your time and sharing your experiences with us. John, first and foremost, can you explain what personalized learning is?
So I'm drawing on a definition that's right out of our book, and it reads that a personalized system of learning is addressing individuals' needs, skills, identities, and interests. It's offering a variety of learning pathways, usually in preparation for college or careers, and assessing learning based on students' competency or proficiency. So all three of those have distinct meanings in my mind. Uh, Addressing individuals' needs, skills, and identities and interests suggests that those are currently not the norm for students who are participating in schools. So, to me, thinking about an individual's interests, needs, and abilities is about really knowing the student well. And it's the idea that currently, in a standard curriculum or a standardized curriculum, uh, that doesn't necessarily represent the skills, interests, and identities that students have. Moreover, when we're talking about particular teachers, I don't even know if it's possible for a particular teacher to know every student well enough to really serve their interests, abilities, and needs and identities.
Mhm,
It's just more than an individual teacher can take on.
mhm,
And I think that's indicated in data, certainly in the United States, where particularly as students shift from elementary school into the middle grades or the high school grades, their engagement in learning drops off.
mhm,
It gets continuously worse and worse and worse as time goes on through their secondary education.
mhm.
And I think that's because they're not engaged. It's because the learning experiences aren't actually speaking to their needs, interests, and identities. So the personalized system is essentially an invitation to do that.
Mhm. And you highlighted three aspects or three principles, or I would say three, what do you call them? Three characteristics?
Three characteristics, three dimensions. The second one is
Yes.
if we assume that it's not true, that current classroom experiences don't actually tap students' interests, identities, and abilities, and we assume that a particular teacher can't possibly do all that for students,
Mhm,
then what is the alternative way for students to move through their education? And that's where the idea of flexible pathways or multiple pathways, instead of just the one pathway that I'm going to learn English literature by taking this particular class, and that everything has to happen in that class, or I don't learn English literature. The alternative is that I can go through that through multiple pathways.
Yeah.
That I could take an early college course instead of taking the high school course. I could take an internship with an author who's a novelist, and I could learn from them how they think about putting together a story, how they reflect on the history of English literature even. And it may be that it's with that person that I actually connect with what it is to be a writer, what it is to be a reader, as opposed to in a class of 30 students, everyone doing the same activities, everyone reading the same book, to move from that necessarily constrained system to a more flexible system that actually does tap or creates the possibility of tapping a student's interests, abilities, and identities and needs. The third dimension is, well, if students are able to follow these different pathways, then how do we assess it? And in the current system, we assess it by the teacher having identified what she or they or he is teaching, and to be testing students on that content. If students are going through various different pathways, then how do we hold them accountable to that same test? And the answer people have come up with is proficiencies. That we don't actually care whether a student can pass a teacher's test. What we care about is if a student really understands and can apply the most important themes or understandings or abilities that are targeted by the course. We should be able to assess that differently.
Yeah.
Not just through a test.
Yeah.
And one way to assess it is through what much of the world has experimented with at different times of something like portfolio evidence.
Yeah.
So looking at authentic evidence of what a student has done with a certain body of knowledge, and to analyze that authentic evidence as opposed to an abstraction in a teacher test.
Thank you, John. I have some questions about your broader definitions to personalized learning. And you talked about three principles or characteristics of personalized learning. Having listened to you, I'm thinking as a teacher, it looks like you're proposing or personalized learning is sort of making a systemic change or system change, where how the students are taught, how the students are assessed, how we tap into students' interest. I think as a teacher, this is beyond my ability to make system change, to change the way I do, because I'm constrained by a curriculum, I'm constrained by the convention or the tradition that we teach our kids. I'm in a school, I have got 30 teachers to teach, I have a subject to teach. So I'm constrained, certain constraints. So what are your suggestions? I know you were talking about portfolio, but perhaps it's easier if you explain to us about how would you advise as an educator to begin with personalized learning rather than changing the entire system, which is beyond our control.
I think you're identifying a real challenge, and it's probably as true in Australia as it is in Vermont. On the one hand, we can't expect teachers to do something fundamentally different in classrooms without systems change. On the other hand, we can imagine ways that teachers could move forward with the principles of personalized learning in spite of the system not changing or changing too slowly. And I'm drawn to a very fundamental truth in my mind, and I think there's some research backing for this, and that it gets back to that original idea of student engagement. That engaging students to the point where they end up being passionate about learning, that they want to continue their learning, that they want to continue their schooling. I think there's a justice element, I think, in terms of ensuring that at least students have a choice of pursuing post-secondary education. That's not to presume that all students must, or that it must look the same for all students, that everyone goes to a four-year university. But the idea that students are dropping out of the education pipeline because they don't like learning, or they don't feel like learning works for them, schooling works for them, that's not okay. That's injustice in my mind. So if engagement is at the heart of it, that it's when students feel engaged, that they become lifelong learners, what is it for teachers to at least pursue that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the same as saying that all of a student's school year must be engaging.
Mm-hmm.
But it is to suggest, and I'm a fan of Philip Schlechte, who has done significant research on engagement. Engagement needs to happen periodically. I need to feel like I am thoroughly in this unit of study. I'm passionate about it. I'm really enjoying meeting people who are also passionate about it, other adults out in the community. Maybe I am doing some sort of service out in the community. I'm feeling like I'm a community member, an active community member, because it is perhaps an inquiry learning experience that engages students in learning and doing beyond the school walls.
Yeah.
That's describing some of the fundamentals of what a personalized learning experience looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Does that have to happen all the time? No. Should we be intentionally creating those sorts of experiences because it increases the likelihood that students not currently engaged in school could be engaged in school?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's not a particularly radical idea.
Not at all.
Because we've known about inquiry learning, we've known about project-based learning, and we've known that students thrive when they're given an opportunity to take on challenges that are real world, that are out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
We know they thrive when they are in relation with other adults in the community, not just their teachers.
Yeah.
So if we know all those things are true, then that is personalized learning.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our colleagues refer, instead of saying personalized learning, they say personal learning.
Yes.
That it is personally meaningful to students.
Yes.
That's the key. And I don't think it's beyond any individual teacher to arrive at a place where they can create learning experiences that are personally meaningful to their students. We know a lot about how to do that. The system of personalized learning, being able to assess those experiences in meaningful ways that don't undercut those experiences. We know a lot about that too. Authentic assessment is a strategy for assessing those experiences. And I think we can leverage the movement of personalized learning to at least legitimize that effort on the part of teachers who want to take the jump into more flexible pathways, more personally meaningful learning experiences for students, and authentic assessment in order to make meaning of those experiences.